Hilchas Mechussarey Kapparah perek chamishi. So we learned that the dam of the osham has to be placed on the tunuch oznei hayimonis, and al derech zeh the shemen should be placed on tunuch oznei hayimonis. So the Rambam says, Ezu tunuch eisen. What's the tunuch of the eisen? Zeu geder hamtzoy. So the ear, there's the outside of the ear, which is like the part that's soft, the soft part of the ear, that's not the cartilage, and that's not the tunuch. And then there's the part of the ear that's going inside the inside, that's the inner portion of the ear. That's also not the tunuch. The tunuch is the geder hamtzoy, the middle part, the part that's in between the part that's soft and the part that's going actually into the ear. So that middle geder, that's called the tunuch. That's the tunuch eisen. Ezel tunuch eisen ze geder hamtzoy, the middle wall. Now nosan, there's a din of behinus. Behinus is the thumb. Now the thumb, the place that you put it on the thumb is on the outside of the thumb, on the same side where the nail is. That's where the behinus is. Now if nosan al tzidei behinus, the thumb has four sides. So there's the outside of the thumb, and then there's the two sides of the thumb, and then there's the bottom of the thumb, the part of the thumb, which is facing the same area where the palm is facing, the same as the palm. Is nosan al tzidei behinus, if you put it not on top of the thumb, on the part of the thumb where it has the nail, but rather on the side of the behinus, is also kosher. However, nosan al tzidei tzideim, you didn't put it on the side, but tzidei tzideim, which would mean the bottom of the thumb, so then it was possible. So you have to put it, there's the tnuch, the tnuch eisen is the geder hamtzoyis, and the behinus we're saying is there's the top of the behinus, and then there's the side of the behinus is also kosher, but tzidei tzideim is possible. Now, we said before that you put the shemen in the became dam hoshim. That's the lashon hapasuk. You put the shemen became dam hoshim. So he says, "Ben shenosan hashemen al dam hoshim atzmi mumayle." You actually put the shemen on the dam hoshim, or ben shenosan b'tzad dam, or you put it on the side of the dam. Or nafilin niskanach adam kedim shitin hashemen al habenis. There's no longer dam there. Is also yotze shnemer al became dam hoshim. The point is not you're putting it on the dam hoshim. You have to put it on the same area where the dam hoshim is. That's this din. So that's the din of the tnuch and the boyin, and it has to be inside the and the shemen is placed, doesn't have to be placed on the dam. It could be placed on the side of the dam, or even if there's no dam there. Now, einle bein yad yemonis, a bein regel yemonis, a she'einle eisen yemonis. He's missing a boyin of either of the yad or of the regel yemonis, or he doesn't have an eisen. So the din is einle tara ilams. So it's impossible to make him a tara. The tara, the tara is connected that there should be the putting of the dam on the boyin of on tunuch oznei and bein yodim bein raglei. The Pasha says we'll see behemshach that what's neged to the tara is beneged the dam. The dam ha'osham is neged to the tara. Masha'enkim beneged the leg hashemen. The fact that if let's say there would be after he did already the boyin. There was the simas hadam on tunuch oznei and bein yodei bein raglei, and then he would be missing this boyin after that, and Mameli wouldn't be able to have this shemen on the bein yodei. The pashtos from the hemshech hadvarim, it's going to come out that that's not liikuva. The Rambam doesn't say that clearly, but the Rambam just says einle bein yad yemonis bein regel yemonis she'einle eisen yemonis einle tara ilamas. Obviously, it means bepashtos because there's no dam there as well. Halacha beis. Asham mitzera sheshachte shalei l'shmei. So memela when it's shachte shalei l'shmei is dochlei ola lebail misham cheva. So therefore, it doesn't really have a din of the osham of this mitzera. He wasn't yotza of bringing his osham. Sheli nosen midome al gabi behenis, or they didn't take the dam and they put it on top of behenis. This dam wasn't placed on top of the behenis. Is areza elul mizbeach. So the peil, it's elul mizbeach because it's carbon osham. So memela the chaylev is elul mizbeach, and v'tornu nesachim kiniski asham mitzera. In other words, it's a kosher carbon. But v'tzorach hamitzera osham acher lachshiri. There's a din that a mitzera has to bring an osham, and that osham is liikuva because this osham is niger that he should be able to bring a chatas. So memela, so this osham that he brought wasn't yetzer because lepeil einachinami. This osham wasn't a psule amugdashim. But on the other end, it was le'ola lebailam shem cheva. So therefore, even though it's elam mizbech and the chiddush v'toy nesachim kiniski hasham mitzera, because normally an ashram doesn't need nesachim. It's a chiddush that Asham Mitzera needs Osham. This Osham is not really a regular Asham Mitzera, because Lepel is not being Olu L'Bayil Misham Cheva. Nevertheless, since Lepel it is an Asham Mitzera, it was an Asham Mitzera, so therefore it's also Toy Nusachim, Kiniski Asham Mitzera, and V'tzorach HaMitzera Osham Achel Lachshiri. Now, Higder Chatosi Lashame is Le'iyah Acher Mimaris Bedoma, because the Seder Advarim is that first you bring the Osham and then you Chatos. So L'chura, since the Shchita is not so Negeya usually, because Shchita is Ksheira Bizarre, so L'chura, let Acher be Mimaris Bedoma, and then go ahead and bring the Osham and then be Makar of the Chatos. Say no. Le'iyah Acher Mimaris Bedoma, L'tuber Tzurasa, V'tetzel Beis Asrefa, because the Shchita was done, Kila was done, Shalem Izmane, it wasn't yet the time for the Shchita's Chatos, so Memeli, you can't be Yaitza with this Chatos. So the Chatos has to be brought after the Osham. That's what we're learning over here, is Nachamol. You have to bring an Osham. The Asham Mitzera, if the Asham Mitzera was brought Shalei Lishma, so you weren't Yaitza the Osham, and you need a Mitzera Osham Acher Lahachshirei to make him kosher, and if you magdim the Chatos for the Osham, so then you have to go ahead and bring another Chatos. This Chatos can't be brought. Now here we see that it's clear that you can't bring the Chatos before the Osham. Higdim Chatosi La'ashamei, so you can't even have someone be Memaris the Dam. The Shchitas HaChatos has to be after the Osham. Now the Maisa we had earlier in Perek Aleph, in Perek Aleph Halacha Hey, when the Rambam was speaking over there, he was speaking about a Yoledis. So he was saying that the Chatos is what's Ma'akev her Kapparah, not the Oila. Then the Rambam over there writes, Aval ha'Oila, and the Rambam also writes, V'ha'osham eino Ma'akvim. Now some people take out the gears of the V'ha'osham. So the Chura V'ha'osham is talking about the Asham Mitzera. Ha'Oila V'ha'osham, we're talking about the Osham of someone that's a Mechussarey Kapparah. Aval ha'Oila V'ha'osham eino Ma'akvim. So it counts like the Osham is not Ma'akiv. L'chura over here we're saying you can't really bring a Chatos before you bring an Osham. So what does it mean the Osham is not Ma'akiv? That's a kasha. And there's another kasha that in Hilchish Gogas the Rambam writes that Kolo Ashamis are Ma'akvim HaKapparah except for Asham Nazir. So all the Ashamis are Ma'akvim the Kapparah, which includes Asham Mitzera. So we're asking whether or not Asham Mitzera is Ma'akiv the Kapparah. So there's a Chatos Mitzera. So Benigay, you led this Lamashal, she brings a Chatos, so she was already Miskaperes. And even if she didn't bring the oil, she's allowed to go eat kachim. Al there is a Azova. Masha'in came, a Mitzera, we're learning over here, you can't bring a Chatos before you bring a Nosham. So Memelu, so the Osham is L'chura Ma'akiv. So the question is, what's Pshat when it says over there, Ha'osham Eina Ma'akiv? So on that, the Achreinu want to answer, Evan Ozl answers, that the Pshat is Azay, that there's two dinim over here. Be'emes, the Chatos is the Mechaper. The Chatos is the Mechaper, not the Osham. The Osham is only a Hechatimtza, that there should be a Chatos. So in other words, you're not allowed to bring a Chatos before you brought the Osham. But once you brought the Osham, so what's Mechaper and what causes, affects the Kapparah is the Chatos. And therefore, Memele, it comes out the two in Yonim. That on one hand, here in Mechussarey Kapparah, the Rambam is saying, Avala Oila v'Osham Eina Ma'akvim. The Osham is not Ma'akiv because that's not really what's causing the Kapparah. And in Hilchish Gogas, the Rambam is saying that it is Ma'akiv. In Hilchish Gogas, the Rambam says, Kol HaShamis is Ma'akiv Kapparah except for by a Nazir, because Bepeil Mamish, by a Mitzera, the Osham is Ma'akiv, is not Kapparah. The question is, L'maynaf Kimina knows this. In Lomdus, you're saying, is the Osham making the Kapparah, or is the Osham only enabling you to be able to bring a Chatos, to be able to bring a Kapparah? Aber Sof Kol Sof, L'chura, how could you say that the Osham is not Ma'akiv? L'chura L'peil Mamish, without the Osham you can't bring the Chatos, so it is Ma'akiv. So on that they bring that there's a din, and Hilchos Nazir is brought down, that a Sofik Mitzera brings a Chatos Ha'ef. A Sofik Mitzera brings a Chatos Ha'ef, and through that he's Matayr, he becomes Torah from his Tzaras. Now L'chura, if he has to bring an Osham. He can't bring a Chatos before he bring an Osham. So how could he bring a Chatos Ha'ef? Over there the din is he has to become a Noni to bring a Chatos Ha'ef Abal HaSofik, because it's a carbon elevated. So to bring a Chatos Ha'ef is only if he's a Noni. So he has to become an Oni, and then he brings a Chatos Ha'ef. But the question is, L'chura, he's didn't bring an Osham. An Osham he can't bring ala Sofik. So how does he bring a Chatos Ha'ef ala Sofik? So the answer is that the Osham is not really what affecting the Kapparah. The Osham is only, you're not allowed to bring the Chatos before you bring the Osham. By Medvar Mamurim, this says the Merkavas HaMishnah. By Medvar Mamurim, if you have a Chiyuv Osham. If you have a Chiyuv Osham, So then you have to bring the Osham, and if you don't bring the Osham, so then then you're missing the kapara. Then you can't bring the chatas, and you can't have the kapara. Masha'enkin, if you can't bring the Osham because it's only a suffix Mitzera, so you don't really have a Chiyuv Osham. When you don't have a Chiyuv Osham, then you're allowed to bring the chatas. And once you bring the chatas is mechaper. So the Nakud is, the chatas is mechaper, and you have to bring an Osham in order to be able to bring the chatas. And when do you have to bring the Osham? If you're a Vadi Mitzera, if you're a suffix Mitzera, then you don't have to bring the Osham. Then you don't have to bring the Osham, and then you can bring the chatas, and then the chatas will be mechaper. Halacha Dalet. Yesh la'odam lohavi ashami hayem v'lugei acher asar yom. Although we learned before that the Chatchila, the Seder is that the Tnufa is the Osham together with the Leg Hashemen, and the Rambam said you can make the Tnufa separately, but now we're learning Nochmer, that you can bring the Lug acher asar yom. V'imrotza l'shanis halug la'asham mitzeir acher. In other words, you have the Lug. The Hasham, the Mitzeir is coming here with the Osham, and he has the Lug, and he wants someone else should use the Lug. He won't use the Lug. They won't use the Lug. Is Mishan Afal Pishe Kiddush B'Kelim. So this Lug Hashemen doesn't have to be together with the Korban. Now Choser Halug actually Yotzak. If before you started pouring, the Seder was you poured the Lug onto the Kapi Asmolis. So if Choser Halug actually Yotzak, you malenu, so then you have to fill it up. Now Choser Me'acher Sheyotzak. If you started pouring the Lug into the Kaf Asmolis, you poured it in. And now you want to go ahead and do what you have to do, the hazor from the kaf hasmolis, from the hazor is its voice from this shemen. But the lug that you poured it from is now missing. Because obviously you poured it into the shemen, into the kaf, it's missing from the lug. But now it's missing more. It's not only missing what was on the kaf, some more spilled out. So the din is you can't go ahead and do the hazois from the kaf unless the lug has all the shemen except for what went onto the kaf. So you're not allowed to pour anything. You can't make the hazois from the kaf unless the lug is a complete lug except for what went onto the kaf. Now yotza halacha hey yotzak min Hashem lekapi and v'hiskal hazis. You started the hazois v'nishpach halug and then the lug got spilled out. Because the shiori halug got spilled out and even part of it got spilled out. Is actually gomer matn sheva nishpach halug if the lug got spilled out or even part of it was before you finished the Matan Sheva, which was Keneged Kedesh HaKadosh, base Kedesh HaKadoshim. So then Yovi Acher, V'yaskul Matan Sheva. So you have to bring a new lug and then pour it on Kaf Yodi HaSmolis, and the whole Seder is new. Whereas what you did, a miktsas of the Hazoi Sheva is nothing. However, Gomar Matan Sheva, you already finished this Matan Sheva, and then V'nishpach HaLug. So that part of the Seder of the lug was already done. So now Yovi Acher, you have to bring another lug, because Lepel, the Hamshech of the Seder, you also can't do while the lug was spilled out, there's Psadin. Yovi Acher, you have to bring another lug. And now, V'yaskal L'chatchila B'Behinus. Now you start the Seder of Behinus. The Seder of the Matan, of Shemen on the Behinus. Even though with the other Shemen you did the Azor, now with this new Shemen, the new lug, and the new Shemen, you do Matan Behinus. Now, Hiskal B'Behinus, you started with Behinus, V'nishpach HaLug, Kedem Shin Yigmar, before you finish the Seder of the Matan Behinus, is Yovi Acher, V'yaskal L'chatchila B'Behinus. You can't go ahead and just bring another one and continue within the Matan Behinus. You have to bring Yovi Acher, V'yaskal L'chatchila B'Behinus. However, Gomer HaBehinus, you finished already the Behinus. V'achar kach nishpach halug, and then the lug was poured out. Koidim she'itn shara shemen shebekapi al reisha mitar, before you put the shara shemen shebekapi al reisha mitar. So then ain't tzorach l'havi lug acher. Then you don't have to go ahead and bring a lug acher to make this matna shemen shebekapi al reisha mitar. Dafka when you have still the lug acher. Shematnas hareish eini ma'akeves. The matnas hareish eini ma'akeves, it's not ma'akev legabi this din. Now here it says shematnas hareish eini ma'akeves. The Rambam earlier in Perek Dalet said the fetish that is ma'akev. The Rambam at the end of Halacha Beis said v'anesim min Hashem and yitnanu hareish mitar v'imli nosem le'kiper. So it says over here le'kiper, and over here the Rambam is saying is eini ma'akeves. It means it's eini ma'akeves. In other words, there's a din that after the matan behoinis, so then the lug hashemen, the rest of the lug hashemen belongs to the kenim can eat it. That's after the matan behoinis. Now, normally the Seder is that after the Matan Behinis, so the Sh'arial Shemen you also put on top of the Reish HaMitar, and that's important for the Seder of what you do with the Lug HaShemen. But on the other end, it's not Negea, it's not Negea, over here you are going to put the Matan Saresh on the Reish HaMitar. It's just you're not going to put it while you still have the Lug HaShemen that's there. Because the Lug HaShemen became already Mutter L'Keanim once you had the Matan Behinis. There's two dinim over here. There's a din you have to have Matan Behinis. Once you have Matan Behinis, so the Lug HaShemen became Mutter L'Keanim. Before Matan Behinis, there was no Heter L'Keanim. Mashiach, after the Matan Behinis, there's a Heter L'Keanim. And now, there's another din that you're supposed to, Mechussarey Kapparah, you're supposed to put Areish HaMitar. That din is not in the same level of the Matan Behinis, because that's what we're going to learn over here. Shenema v'hanoiser b'Hashemen, u'miyeser Hashemen. So there's miyeser Hashemen, that's miyeser Hashemen, we say that you give Matan Behinis. V'hanoiser b'Hashemen, that's already neser b'Hashemen, that we do the Matan al Haresh. So that's not solely ikuva, like the miyeser Hashemen that you give for the Matan Behinis, and then that you put on the Matan Behinis, right, on the Eisen and on the Behinis. So therefore, is if you didn't do yet the Yeser Hashemen, so then, and there's missing of the lug, so you can't do the Matan Behinis. Masha'enkin, if you already did the Matan Behinis, now the only thing that's you missing is the Mineser Hashemen. So Mineser Hashemen is not a problem if the lug spilled out. So you are going to go ahead and put Mineser Hashemen. Because if you didn't put Mineser Hashemen, you didn't do the Gemar of what you were supposed to do with the Shemen. The Shemen you're supposed to have also the putting on the head. And if you didn't put it on the head, as the Rambam said before, you didn't lay keeper. What's the Rambam? Lashon Rambam. The Rambam says, lay nosel lay keeper. Lay keeper means it was not really a Gemara Kapparah of the Shemen. But on the other hand, it was already mutter lekanim, and therefore the fact that the lug was spilled out is not negay. Let's read again. Gomar behenis v'achar kach nishbach halug kedim sheet nishar hashemen shebekapi al reishim mitar ein tzorich lavi lugacher. You're going to put it al reishim mitar, but you don't have to bring a lugacher. Shematas al reish ein ma'akeves legabi that lug. Notice that lug became mutter before you put it al reishim mitar. Shenema v'haneser b'shemen. This is only haneser b'shemen. There's a miyeser hashemen and mineser hashemen. The Hanesem Hashemen is not negate to the heter of the lug. Memela, the fact that the lug spilled out, that's not liikuva. That's the nekudas adin. Now the Maisa is lepeil. We're learning about the din of the Nesinas Hashemen, and the question is keeper or lay keeper. The Pashtus we learned before, and that's the Rogat Shavuos Medayik from Lashon Rambam, and it's L'chura Muchach, that once you bring the Osham, and once you do the Matan Behinis, the Matan on the Tluchezen and the Behinis of the Dam Hosham, so then you could go ahead and bring the Chatos. Once you bring the Chatos, so you became Mechussarey Kapparah, then he's already Nischaper. So you don't really need the whole Seder of the Lug Hashemen for his Kapparah. In order for him to become, it's not so clear in the Rambam, but there's L'churas Muchach like that. That's the Rambam Aruch, that's the Ruiz, he brings it. That, in other words, the kapparas we learned before, you have to bring an osham in order to bring a chatos. Once you bring a chatos, so then you have a kappara. And then there's a din that you also have to bring the lug hashemen. You could bring the chatos before the lug hashemen. So once you bring the osham and you have the matan behenis of the osham, so then the matan behenis of the osham, then of the dam osham, so then you go ahead and bring the chatas, and then you also bring then you do the seder of the lug hashem. Then you do the seder of lug hashem. I mean, you don't have to bring the chatas, but the Ram the seder was that after that you can bring the chatas. So the Mela, all these dinim that we're learning about this matan shemen is a din in the hilchis matan shemen. A mitzera has a chiyuv to bring a lug shemen, and he has to. This chiyuv is part of his seder what he has to do, which is part of his seder hatara. But that Seder Atara is not liikuva. It's not liikuva. This Seder Atara, just like Yoledis has to bring a chatas and a elo. When she brings a chatas, she was Mekayim Seder Atara. She has to also bring an oila. That's part of the Seder Atara, but it's not liikuva. Aldera is that the Lug Hashemen is also not liikuva. So Mela, when it says lay keeper, It means a late keeper in the sense of the chiyuv of the lug hashemen. That's what it means. In the chiyuv of the lug hashemen, you weren't mechaper. Halacha vav. Higdim matan shemen lematan dam. If he was first, he put the shemen on before he put the dam. So then is yimali haluk shemen. So that's not the shemen. The shemen is done after the dam. That's after the seder of the dam of the osham. So yimali haluk shemen, and then v'yaz of yitna shemen achar dam. Now higdim matan shemen ala behenis lematan sheva. The seder is that first there's 7 hazoyis of the shemen connected base kedesh hakadoshim, and then there's the matan shemen ala behenis. What happens if he did fakert? First he put the shemen ala behenis, and then there was matan shevas again. Yimali al lake, so he has to refill the lake, and v'yaz of yitna ala behenis. There's the whole seder has to be a new seder. Achar matan sheva shneimar zoyis tia teres hamitzeder shetia kol tiras ala seder. So in Mela, it has to be that the shemen comes after the dam. That's number one. And also that the matan behenis comes after the azoy sheva. Halacha zayin nosen sheva na maton shalei lishmon leihurtza. So leihurtza means that there was no ritzui of this luk shemen. Nosen sheva na maton shalei lishmon aber v'huksher ha-mitzera. The mitzera is muksher. And as we said before, the mitzera is muksher even without the luk hashem. Without the lug Hashem, he's also muksher. But lepeil, he was leihursa. There was no ritzui of this shemen. Halacha ches. Mitzera shenisnaga achar shehevi hashomi. He brought his asham, and now he became, he got a nega again. So tzarech korban achar l'tzara shniya. So if he got a nega after he already brought the asham, so now he needs another korban l'tzara shniya. V'cheinim hevi hashami for the tzara shniya and the again of his naga is tzarech korban al kol achas v'achas. That's if he the asham came, if he became he got a nega after the asham, and the pashtus he's mechuyev to bring a chatas. He has to bring a chatas still for the first tzaras, and now he's going to have to also bring a chatas for the second tzaras. In other words, once he brought the asham, so at that point in time there's a certain finishing of the tzaras, even though he didn't become Mechussarey Kapparah like we learned, because he has to bring the chatas. But once he brought the asham, so then the tzaras finished, and now if there's a new tzaras, he has to bring a new korbanos, a new sets of korbanos. But he has to pashtus also bring the chatas, and he has to bring the chatas and the eila for the previous tzaras. And now, since he again became a mitzvah, he's going to have to bring an asham and a chatas and eila for the next tzaras. For the v'cheinim hevi hashami v'nisnaga tzarech korban al kolachas v'achas. Aval nisnaga he had a nega, and v'nirpa and v'hevi tziperov, and he became tor. Aber v'chozev v'nisnaga v'nisrapi v'hevi tziperov. So he never really reached the point where he was hevi hashamov. So then korban echad l'kulam. Then he only brings one korban of taras hamitzera. Knows even though he went through the tzaras process more than once. He became a mitzvah and he became tor, and he went through the taglachas. He went through the whole thing, but he didn't lepel have the asham. He didn't actually bring the asham. So then he's still considered a mitzvah, and therefore he only brings one set of korbanos for all the tzaras. Halacha tes mitzvah shehevi korban oni v'hesher, because he was mafresh a korban oni and he became rich. A osher, he was mafresh a korban osher v'hani. And we're talking about koidim shiakrav korban nesef. He wasn't yet makrav the korbanos. Because he was mafresh a korban oni and he became rich, or he was mafresh a korban osher and he became poor. So hakel helech achar oshim. Everything depends on the oshim. Now, the din of the korban oni and the korban osher is only negir really to the chatas and the oila. The oshim either way is a keves. But depending on what the person was when he was makrav the oshim. Imo yibishash chitas oshim osher. If he was an osher when he was shash chitas osham, is yishalem korban osher. So then he has to bring a korban osher. His chiyuv is determined b'shas chiyuv bringing the osham. The im hoyani, if he was an oni while he brought the osham, so even if he became rich, is yishalem korban oni. Halacha yud. Shnei mitziroim shenis arvu korban niseim. You have two mitziroim. Over here we're talking about mitziroim ashirim, and they were nisarvu korban niseim, and v'nizrak dam achas mishtei achatoy shalem. So their chatois got mixed up, and lepeil the kohen, you brought the chatois to the kohen. Now the kohen went ahead and he was makriv one of the chatois. L'shem, whoever is the bailim, obviously with the intention to be makriv the next chatas also with whoever is the bailim, whoever is the real bailim. V'nizrak dam achas mishtei chatoy shalem, abel lepel v'achar kach meis echad min ha-mitziroim. Now one of the mitziroim died, so one of the chatoys were nikrav. Now one of the mitziroim died, and we don't know if the mitzera that's alive whether he brought already his chatas. Ketzad oiseh zeh mitzera chai. What could he do? La'avi chatas behema eini yochel, because Shem is Zushanikra Nizrak Dama Chatasi. To go ahead and bring on the Chatas Behema al Asofik, maybe it's his Chatas. He can't because maybe he already was Makrav his Chatas. They may be in Chatas Behema al Asofik, because maybe this Chatas was really of the person that died. So it's a Chatas Shmeisu Ba'Allah. So how can you bring the Chatas? Ulahavi Chatas Eif in Yochel, to go ahead and bring a Chatas Eif he also can't, because She'osher She'evi Karban Ani Leyotza. So what's the Eitzah? The Ketzid Yasa is Yichtev Kol Nechosav Le'acher, and V'nimtza Oni, and V'yavi Chatas Eif Misofik, V'leit Yochel, K'mishim B'yarno, and V'nimtza Eichel B'kotchim. Because he wants to eat B'kotchim, so he has to bring a Chatas. So he brings he can't bring a Chatas Behema, because maybe he was already brought a Chatas Behema. So mainly he brings a Chatas Eif, Abal Asofik, and that enables him to eat Kotchim. That's the halacha. It's a clear halacha. So one of the chatois were dikrav. We don't know whose chatas it was. So the person that's alive doesn't know if he brought a chatas or not. The only eitzah is for him to become an ani, and then he can bring a chatas eif. But the shaila over here is, what happened with the ashamis? Well, the ashamis brought already. Because the Rambam is saying there was sumet zeroim, shenis arva karboniseyam, and one chatas was nizak. Was done. Now, in order for a chatas to be done, we learned before that the asham had to be done first. So for sure, one asham was brought. Now, was the other asham also brought? Was the other asham also brought? Now, the chur mimanav shach is not understandable, because if the other asham was brought as well, so the chur, the status of whether you're an ani or an usher depends on what your status was when they brought the asham. So lepel, what's going to help that he's going to go ahead and be yichted kol nechasav la'acher lepel, since when they brought the asham, he was an usher, so mainly yichted kol nechasav la'acher doesn't help. Elamai, we're going to say, l'chura will have to say that it's talking about they didn't bring two ashamas, they only brought one asham, because they brought one asham and one chatas, and we don't know whose asham and whose chatas was brought. So now we're saying that this second person should go ahead and bring a chatas eif. But what about the asham? The churi has to bring an asham. He can't bring a chatas eif until he brings an asham. And the churi, he can't bring an asham because it's a suffix. An asham is not ba'al a suffix. So what's pshat in this halacha in Rambam? In other words, what's the eitzah? He's saying there's an eitzah that he should go ahead and give away his nechasim and it'll become a nani. That eitzah is not an eitzah, because if he brought an asham, so it's not an eitzah. And if he didn't bring an asham, so it's also not an eitzah, because that's an eitzah for a chatas, not for an asham. So this is another raya that the Merkavas HaMishnah brings, that lepel, since, and that's another, because we mentioned before in Ilchos Naziris, the Ram writes it clearly, that there's a mitzvah when you have a suffix, whether you're mechuyev, so then you cannot bring an asham. In other words, this mitzvah that's alive, he cannot bring an asham, because he doesn't know, maybe he brought an asham. So since he cannot bring an asham, he's not mechuyev in an asham. Once he's not mechuyev in an asham, so then he can bring the chatas eif without bringing an asham. So this, in other words, normally the din is you have to bring an asham, and only after you bring the asham could you bring the chatas. And if you bring the chatas before the asham, you're not yetzer. And you can't even have memaris adam. It was tubit surase and teitzel beis hasreifa. Masha'en ken over here we have a mitzias of mitzera that by him there's a suffix. Maybe they brought an asham. Maybe they brought an asham. Because of that suffix, he can't bring an asham. No, if he can't bring an asham, so he's not mechuyev in an asham. But he's lepel, he wants to have a kapparah. He doesn't know if he has a kapparah or not. So therefore, the eitzah is that he goes ahead and yichtiv kol nechasav la'acher, and then he's able to eat bekotchim. He brings a chatzah eif abol asaf. Halacha Yudalef. Osher she'amar karbani shel mitzera ze olav, v'hamitzera hoya ani. So the pashtus, this mitzera, if he would have brought himself the carbon, he would have brought a carbon osher, ani rather. But since the usher was accepting upon himself the chiyuv that this carbon ani is hareze mevi al yodi carbon is usher, so he has to bring a carbon usher shari yad haneder masegas, because since lepel the noider kilu took over the chiyuv of the mitzera is mechuyev, he's mitzad din arvus, he takes over the chiyuv of the mitzera, he's being noider to take over the chiyuv of the Mechussarey, and when he has this chiyuv, so Memeli, as an usher, he has to bring a carbon usher. Whereas the pasha, you could think, no, he's not taking over the chiyuv of the Mechussarey. He's only taking upon himself to go ahead and bring the carbon that this Mechussarey would have brought, and this Mechussarey would have brought a carbon ani. So he could also bring a carbon ani. So that's the chiddush. The chiddush is not like that. The chiddush is that since Ba'amis he's an usher, so Memela, when he accepted on himself to bring the karbanis of this ani, so it's clearly he became mechuyev in those karbanis, and on someone that's mechuyev in these karbanis, if he's an usher, he has to bring a carbon usher. Now, v'ani sha'amar karbanis shel Mechussarey ze'olai, an ani that accepted upon himself the karbanis of this Mechussarey, v'haya Mechussarey usher, and lepel the Mechussarey was an usher. So then the din is harei mevi al yodei karbanis usher. Shaharei ze hanoider chayev b'karbanis usher. Now these words, Sharei Zah Neider Chayiv Karbanis Asher, is not so clear. That's what he said. He said you're Chayiv and Karbanis Asher because that's what you're Chayiv. These words are extra words. So there's a Richos Advarim in L'Kutzesichas and Chelik Kav Zayin on this Inyan. The Rebbe's Masber Azay, based on this what we said before. Whereas Be'emes, when a person is Neider to give someone's Karbanis, so Be'emes, it's like a gather of Arvos. He becomes mechuyev in those karbanis. He was noided to give those karbanis. He becomes mechuyev in those karbanis. So the mele, and when he becomes mechuyev, so according to what kind of matzav he is, that's what kind of chiv he has. So that's the din of mashal. An osher shenoda lahavi karbanis of a Mechussarey, and the Mechussarey was an ani. So l'chura there would be a svarim mitzad hilchus nedarim. He only has to bring a carbon ani. Abalapel, since he accepted upon himself the chiv of this Mechussarey's karbanis, and he's an usher. An usher, when he has chiyuv karbanis of Mechussarey, has to bring a carbon usher. Al derazeh l'chura the ani that accepted upon himself the karbanis of Mechussarey usher. So eina chinami, the Mechussarey is an usher, but since the ani is the one that accepted upon himself those karbanis, so l'chura as an ani he should be able to bring a carbon ani. L'chura there would be a svara that an ani, just like the usher is mechuyev and karbanis usher, because he's the one that's now is mechuyev. So the ani should also only be mechuyev in a carbon ani because he's the one that's now mechuyev. So that's why the Ram answers, adds sharizeh neder chay b'karbanis osher. In other words, mitzad, the neder was that karbanis ze'olai. In other words, mitzad hilchis, there's chapt kilu, that there's two dinim over here. There's one din, mitzad his chiyuv of bringing the karbanis. So taka the chiyuv of bringing the karbanis would taka be such a type of chiyuv which is not really mechayiv that he should bring karbanis asher, because lepel is an ani. But since he said that karbanis ze'olai, in other words, karbanis shel Mechussarey ze'olai, so mitzad hilchis neder, so he was mekabel himself on mitzad the neder to take the karbanis of this Mechussarey. So memele he has to bring karbanis of a asher. So like more of mitzad hilchis neder than hilchis Mechussarey. Now the Rebbe is medayik that l'churei bazei what's pshat harizah mevi al yodi karbanis asher. So that the Rebbe is masber that since he accepted on himself to take over the karbanis usher, so mainly he accepted on himself that he's going to give karbanis usher. So he has a din of an usher, and once he has the din of an usher, so also inside the din of an usher he has to bring karbanis. It needs maybe more explanation to explain what the Rebbe is being masber over here. But I'll call upon the din is clear that an usher that took upon himself to take the status of an ani, he has to bring a carbon usher. And al derazeh an ani that took upon himself to bring the karbanis of an usher has to also bring a karbanis of an usher. The Rebbe, when on this halacha Ram, the Rebbe quoted that there was one time a yid benegeh by the Frierdiker Rebbe that accepted upon himself something which was far greater than his capabilities. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said then that when a person accepts upon himself things which are l'mayla from his capabilities, the Eibishter opens new tzineris, new kelim, new tzineris, in order to be mamshich shefa, which is more than what he had until now. The Rebbe said, this ani took upon himself the karbanis of an usher, he's the chanani. So how could he expect him to bring the karbanis of an usher, he's an ani? So the answer is no, because since he accepted upon himself to bring the karbanis of an usher, so the Eibishter taka opens new tzineris that he should be able to taka bring the karbanis of an usher. So he gets the din of an usher. Slikulu hilchis Mechussarey Kapparah b'sayayta d'shmaya.